Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. I am very happy to be your chairperson this morning, and we have an excellent and very, very important program. So, of course, you know already, the people online, that it is estimated that 400 children develop cancer every year. And in 2021, St. Jude's Research Children's Hospital and WHO launched a very important initiative. So this was the global platform. And this comes from an analysis that if we really need to do something that is a game changer, it would be to give access to medicines to children. So since then, St. Jude's and WHO has worked together, and St. Jude's has committed a 6-year investment to launch the global platform in partnership with WHO. And you will learn today many things about that when we listen to several of the speakers. I hope we'll also be able to give some perspectives on how partners can contribute and also engage in the platform. So I'm very happy to introduce the first speaker today, and this is a person that is known probably to most of you already, and it's a real pleasure to introduce, 2 seconds, I just had some technical glitches here. Let me see. The opening address, and this is coming from President of the International Society of Pediatric Oncology. So it is my honor and my pleasure to introduce Guillermo Cantada, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Bente, dear friends. Well, it's such a pleasure for SIOP to be present in this forum. SIOP is actively participating in the platform, as Bente mentioned, and also has a very active discussion group on essential medicines, whose members are going to be the presenters in this forum. So for SIOP, this is really a priority. The list of the drugs that should be accessible for all the countries need to be improved continuously. New indications come, and not just new indications or new drugs. It's the way we can apply these drugs in low and middle income countries in many times is not the same as we would do in high income countries. We have different issues, we have different challenges in our setting. The treatment-related mortality is very important. So some drugs that have been used in high-income countries for some indications need to be redefined and rethought in low and middle-income countries, but with also having in mind that treatment-related mortality is one of our most important issues to deal with. So any improvements that we can make figuring out how to use these drugs is really essential, and these are the forums where we can really make that happen. SIOP is also supporting in association with Resonance and Servier. We are working on the Act for Children program, where well, it's going to be described later in detail, but it is also a very important project for SIOP in order to enable the access to essential drugs for children with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. So again, a real pleasure, a real honor for SIOP. Thanks OncoDaily for organizing this very important event, and looking forward to a lot of very fruitful discussions.
Thank you very much. And without partners like SIOP and CCI and others, it will never be real implementation on the ground. So I'm extremely happy to see you. And also thank you for mentioning the focus on low and middle income countries. As we know, there are huge discrepancies, and this is exactly what we want to achieve at the platform, to have a survival rate that is above 60% for all children. So thank you very much. It is then my immense pleasure to introduce André Ilbawi. I think he's known to most of you, but he is the technical lead in Cancer Control Department in Cancer Control in the Department of Non-Communicable Diseases, Rehabilitation and Disability at the World Heart Organization in Geneva. And he will tell us more about Essential Medicines, the global platform, how it works, and also what WHO's contributions to this initiative is. So, André, the floor is yours.
Well, just to begin, thank you, Dr. Mikkelsen. There is no greater honor than to share a stage with you, which we've been able to do a few times now together in the past 5 years. Congratulations to you, Dr. Mikkelsen, on your new role in your leadership with the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, supporting global programs and access to the best possible care for all children, not only with cancer, but for catastrophic diseases. To begin, thank you to Oncodeli. These discussions are very timely and very needed when we look at the broader landscape of international collaboration, of multilateralism under immediate threat, to remind ourselves that solidarity starts with a conversation. It starts with these types of events where we can share ideas, where we can inspire each other. And it is a high honor to be here with many of you listening, and also to thank my co-panelists, Dr. Mikkelsen again. We heard from Professor Chantada, a wonderful leader in the community, and others who will be speaking. Thank you also to Dr. Gevorg, and again to Oncodeli for taking the lead. We need these conversations at a time where there is a transactional nature to the world that we live in. And we should be reminded that children with cancer inspire us to remember that when we work together, we can do so much good. So for the next 15 minutes, I have the high honor of providing an orientation to the global platform, to give a context for what we are trying to achieve. And in reality, when we say we intend to be in practice, which is a joint effort of all stakeholders across the childhood cancer community, from the private sector to different international organizations like we've heard from SIOP and CCI. This is a joint venture. When we define this work as a global platform, we call it a platform because it is exactly that, an opportunity for all stakeholders to be able to contribute, as we've heard already from SIOP, and as we know from the commitments of other partners like Servier. So I will pull up the slide shortly, and we can go through the history and the context of the global platform and talk a bit more in detail as to what is happening and where we are today. It starts with this quote that many of you have heard before, and many of you feel this in your hearts. Where a child lives should not determine whether he or she lives. This is the ethos of childhood cancer, and it's been your guiding light, our guiding light, for almost 50 or 70 years. Childhood cancer collaboration at the global level was one of the first global health endeavors in the cancer and NCD community. And it took us many years to realize that coming under a broader umbrella, we can do more together. But that's exactly what happened when in 2018, we launched the Global Initiative for Childhood Cancer. Stakeholders across sectors coming together at the UN high-level meeting with the recognition, if we call ourselves a global coalition, a global initiative, we can achieve something great. What we had committed to achieve is that at least 60% of children with cancer should survive that diagnosis, and all children with cancer should have their suffering alleviated, again, regardless of where they live. This was the foundation of GICC, and when we look at what has been achieved in the past 7 years, it is nothing short of miraculous. I know many of us that were sitting at that first stakeholder consultation felt that there was something, but could we have dreamt that now 7 years later, 80 or more countries are taking on this global initiative? It's a situation where we hear governments knocking on our doors, knocking on your doors to say, what is this cure-all pillars and enablers? How can we be part of GICC? And it's because of a community that you have created. So thank you for that. 80 countries and growing. The impact has exponentially increased over time, but there is this persistent challenge that we have heard. The cure-all pillars and enablers have many assets and tools that can help countries bridge that survival gap. But that one challenge of government saying we need to do more in medicines. And this is why, again, the childhood cancer community is so unique, is because it's always responding to the needs of the most vulnerable. So we heard over 80% of countries participating in GICC saying we need to do more with access to medicines. We had also recognized that within key alliances like the St. Jude Global Alliance Network, many of those foundations and partners were saying the same. We don't have the medicines that we need. And while cure-all pillars and enablers will take us a far way, it doesn't change the reality that most children that we care for don't have reliable access to quality assured and affordable cancer medicines. That was the foundation. So we started, as you heard from Dr. Mikkelsen, a years-long process of mapping what are the challenges, what are the products, what are the contexts, and we quickly realized that this is not a one-solution-fits-all approach. We needed a customized approach that would bring a transformation in access to childhood cancer medicines. And this, again, is what the platform is. It is this foundation for all of us to bring our key actions. We have on the call, for example, Professor Vassal from SIOP Europe, the great work that he's done to define access to innovative products. We'll hear more about that from Dr. Howard. What we're talking about is a platform, a new opportunity, and a new hope. We cannot accept the reality that most children with cancer simply don't have access to the medicines they need because of where they lived. Or if they do have access, they have no assurance that the products that they're receiving have been approved by a regulatory authority or quality assured, or that they get to the hospital and there's a stock out, or the worst case scenario that they get there, the medicines are there, but they're told they have to sell assets to buy those medicines. These are the realities that this new hope is changing. And as we heard from Dr. Mikkelsen, it has all been made possible by this immense commitment that St. Jude Children's Research Hospital has made, $200 million to completely reset and recalibrate a market towards better access and towards new hope. So those are the principles. We know all that. And it's nice to just pause and reflect that this is a journey we've taken together. Now, what is the global platform? Many of you have heard about it in different presentations and talks, perhaps in some media events. But let's get into the details. And what is that we can do together? Because this principle of the global platform, again, being an opportunity for stakeholders to come together, is how we see its success in the future. We started by defining what are the core achievements we hope the global platform will be able to reach in the upcoming 5 years. The first is it's our core function. At the end of the day, we know that we cannot fly in medicines, but we have to start with the recognition that this platform is oriented around access to medicines. So one of the foundational objectives is to ensure that the platform provides those medicines by purchasing them and distributing them and ensuring that the medicines are those that are deemed essential, are quality assured by a regulatory authority, and done so at no cost at the current time to the recipient countries. That is the foundational principle of the platform, but that's not it. As you can see here, a photo with the first ladies, we've had heads of states, ministers of health, deputy prime ministers come forward and say, we recognize that with this platform, we can do more. We can galvanize the health community, we can improve access to cancer care, and we'll talk more about that because we don't stop our work with this quote unquote donation program. This is not a donation program. It's a commitment. It's a commitment by us in the childhood cancer community, WHO, St. Jude, UNICEF, the PAHO Strategic Fund, and it's also a commitment by governments. Linked to that is the recognition that if we want the child and their family to be receiving the best possible medicines, we have to have visibility on what's happening all the way upstream from what's happening in the market to the supply chain and ultimately downstream to what happens in hospitals and facilities. And our support doesn't just stop with the idea of purchasing medicines. In fact, as we'll talk about, there is an entire approach of supporting governments, hospitals, clinicians achieve a certain threshold of readiness so that, for example, standard operating procedures are in place to ensure that those handling chemotherapy medicines are able to do so in a way that protects them and protects those around them. So it's also about capacity building. And it's also recognizing, again, that this is a platform for collaborative partnerships. It doesn't stop with 4 organizations and governments. It starts with 4 organizations and all of us. That is why we're again here today. The power of partnership is the foundation. It has been the foundation of GICC, and it will propel us to new heights for the platform. You see this slide because it is written in bold and so important to say. Collaboration is the key to success. With that, as I shared earlier, I have the privilege to present this on behalf of the platform partners. I do want to pause. Again, we've heard of the great generosity of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. It also is critical to acknowledge the important role that the procurement agencies are also serving for the platform, those agencies specifically being UNICEF and the PAHO Strategic Fund. These partners, these core partners for the platform, are the ones that came with the vision, but now we have quickly expanded the circle. We're grateful to be having discussions with SIOP, with Childhood Cancer International, with World Child Cancer, with so many partners around the world, JFAOP. To figure out how can we do this is a collaborative exercise, the foundation of success, and also acknowledging that it starts at the local level. We know the challenges. I'll go through this. Statistics are always nice to share, but I know many of you that are listening are aware of these statistics. What are the challenges? Why medicines? We gave the context. But as we figured out, what are the core pillars to focus on? One is often the medicines are not available. They're just simply not stocked in pharmacies in many of the centers that need to be providing cancer care. The second is there's also been a long-standing concern about the quality of childhood cancer and cancer products more broadly. You can see in the figure on the right side of the screen that cancer is the most common substandard or falsified product reported to WHO among all non-communicable disease medicines. There has been a lot of very good science, community action against asparaginase to ensure that it's quality assured. And these are the types of problems that we're trying to respond to, because we know, again, that products that are given to children with cancer in their vulnerable state need to be of a certain quality. And the last is to recognize that pricing approach is also relevant. Some of the poorest countries pay the highest amounts for the same medicines purchased in comparison to a high-income country. This is a market failure. This is not the fault of one organization or entity. This is the fault of a system, the fault of a tender process, the fault of market access, the fault of so many other dynamics that come to play. But it doesn't make sense that we should have to pay more for the same product for a child in Malawi as compared to a child living in the United Kingdom. So what is the platform going to achieve? The investment has been made. Now the commitment is that every child participating in the platform with a target of 50 countries by around 2029, 2030, will be able to receive an uninterrupted supply of quality assured, safe, effective medicines. 50 countries, 120,000 children. We can get there together. And this is not just one medicine, because we know childhood cancer care requires a package of medicines. So on the formulary is every product on the WHO list of essential medicines for children with cancer that constitutes 58 products and formulations. So this is, again, the transformational change. And what's unique also is our ability to have upstream and downstream intelligence to make sure that the products are there and that they're purchased by a manufacturer that has been approved by a stringent regulatory authority. Foundational to the success is this principle of co-design. Many of us have heard the term, many of us are trying to institute it in our work, and you can see what is happening in many countries around the world. Small workshops, people sitting together, having discussions on what does the supply process look like? Let's do some process mapping on how products will be handled, distributed, what hospitals will be receiving them, what volumes, what services, what conditions. So many of those fundamental questions are not asked from an office in Geneva. They're answered in a room in the corners of hospitals and ministries in the countries with whom we're working. Here's an example of what we can deliver. Again, this is much more than medicines. This is an experience now from Nepal, because we're able to celebrate products are in country. The political commitment isn't just a word. So this is an example in Nepal where the Ministry of Health said, thank you to the platform partners for your generosity. Thank you to St. Jude for purchasing the medicines. Because you're providing the medicines, we will offer every child with cancer the financial protection for all the services that they need. So they increased, progressing us towards universal health coverage for all childhood cancer services, all, because of the catalytic effect of the platform. This is exactly what we had been dreaming of. An investment made, an investment matched. Governments taking on board their responsibility and their opportunity through these political commitments, and we celebrate the Ministry of Health and the government of Nepal for that. Again, an example for Nepal, not just providing medicines. This is about integrated support. So what has the platform been able to do? Support HR infrastructure, good governance through the Ministry of Health, If it's a problem, as we look at the hospital capacities, we've also been able to invest in refrigerators, in cold boxes, and data systems. And this is part of this minimum standard concept, which is if, for example, the cold chain may be at risk of breaking, we can help that. We can help that by making a small investment in refrigerators and ensure that the products are maintained in the cold chain throughout the supply chain. This is exactly the ambition, which is we're doing much more than providing product. Another example, we noted that there were some SOPs missing around training of key health professionals, how to handle chemotherapy, how to mix it, how to dispose of it. So we worked with the hospitals in Nepal to do that training, on-site training, remote training, whatever is needed to ensure the capacities are in place. And then ultimately to keep thinking, to push the horizon. This is also a platform about innovation, how we take these ideas and we change the dynamics to improve access using innovation. So here again, we were able to take a springboard to better data systems, a springboard to better standards of care in Nepal because of the platform's effect. So many of you know we're celebrating that medicines have been received in 5 countries, a major milestone, again, with credit to be given to so many people that have been part of this initial coalition. We now have 12 countries that are onboarding, and we have many, many more countries that have expressed interest. The engagement process is one that we say is about a year onboarding. And the reason for that is because we're investing in relationships. It starts with that check. Is the system currently in place to distribute, to handle, and provide childhood cancer medicines in the most safe and effective way? So that constitutes a situational analysis, some on-site engagement with ministry or hospital counterparts. Once that's in place and we have confirmed that all the necessary ingredients to achieve these core minimum standards are available, we then progress with the distribution and receipt of product. And again, the relationship doesn't stop there. We work actively with countries to track everything from what's currently in inventory to have you had any adverse events, because that's part of the commitment we make, to be able to give end-to-end support and know what's happening to the receipt of product for that child with cancer and the early outcomes that child experiences. And then, of course, it doesn't stop there. We have to know, are there additional purchases that are needed, medicines that are at risk of stock out? So having that visibility of where is products, not only all the way upstream with the suppliers, but downstream in the supply chain, in the hospital pharmacies, and in the care or in the receipt of children who are receiving those medicines. We need to have that visibility because we want to assure that there is never a stock out, and that when adverse events happen, we have very good visibility as to why it happened and what we can do about it. So let's start that process a bit more. There's a country operational plan. It usually takes about 6 months. And in that process, we immediately, when we onboard the countries, initiate the process of procurement planning. Again, this is about also technical support. You may see that green circle in the middle in which there are visits to say, how can we help with capacity building? Because this is an investment in communities, in hospitals, in ministries far beyond just the medicine itself. And then once these activities are completed, we are able to celebrate that milestone of receiving medicines. This is an example of a specific country. Over a 1-year process, welcoming, assessing, supporting the quantification and supply planning, technical visits, capacity building visits, infrastructure investments when needed, and then ultimately receipt of product. It's a year, but it's a year well spent. And when that year culminates, the medicines are in the hands of the providers that are asking for them and at the care of the children who deserve them. This is something many of us dreamed of. We had a lifetime experience dream of GICC, and many of us are living through a second dream, which is now the platform. This is, for our community, a life-defining moment, a generational moment to change how children with cancer receive medicines, and to do so with an entire lens on what's happening upstream from research and innovation to downstream monitoring of results, the safety and care and provision of those children with cancer. We did it only because of this incredible commitment from St. Jude, and also because each of you have invested in GICC. So thank you for building this GICC movement. It has allowed us now to recognize we can do more. Let's keep building this together because the needs are so high. This is for us a generational opportunity to support hospitals, families, governments with end-to-end solutions in place, and to use system-based solutions that have been effective in other programs like in vaccines. Thank you for this belief and partnership. Thank you for a shared commitment to children with cancer. Thank you to St. Jude for making this a reality. And thank you to all the partners. Again, we've said them, let's say again, SIOP, CCI, World Child Cancer, JFAOP, Max Foundation, so many that have made a lifelong commitment to childhood cancer. We're changing this difficult reality for children around the world together, and we're creating a better future for all. Thank you, Dr. Mikkelsen, back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ilbawi and there, André. It was fantastic, and I hope the audience is as excited as I am. And I think we need to highlight some of the things you said. I think the co-design that you're talking about is really the key to the success. So that is let's call it a fancy word to really look into adaptation and contextualizing the provision of medicine. Because this is a situation where one size does not fit all, even if we have very good grip on how to actually treat children. And I also want to like to underscore the two other main partners, so UNICEF and PAHO Strategic Fund. You mentioned them several times. I started with mentioning St. Jude's and WHO, but without UNICEF and PAHO Strategic Fund, we would never have been able to procure, and also not only procure, because as you say, this is not a donation platform. This is a platform where we want to see innovation, both in the provision of medicines, but also how to improve and develop the supply chain. And the last stakeholder that you mentioned, and a crucial one, is the Minister of Health and the government. So I think to be able to see more success stories like Nepal, we need to be sure that we keep the government both accountable, but also interested in these solutions. And I have no doubt that that will happen. So with that, thank you very much, André. And it's now my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, which is Manette Legrange, and that is from the Corporate Social Responsibility Project. She's a lead, Iconic Servier, and we will listen to you and learn more about the Act for Children role in driving drug access in collaboration, of course, with the platform. So the floor is yours. Very nice to meet you online.
Thank you so very much for the introduction. I want to just make sure that you can hear me and can see my slides. Sorry, I don't think you can either hear or see me. Can you hear and see me? Just give me an indication. Perfect. And then I want to just make sure that you can see my slides as I share them. Okay, let's assume that you can see my slides as well, because if I hide them, then it seems that if I can't see the chat. Okay, so André, it's fantastic to follow you because you've really set the stage, and André has told you in many words actually that the stars are really aligning for childhood cancer. And with the global platform for drug access for children, we are witnessing a true turning point in the global fight against childhood cancer. It's not only for children in low and middle income countries, but it's really something that affects all children, regardless of where they live or the circumstances that they're born into. This shift isn't being driven by a miracle drug moving through clinical trials. It's something more tangible, as André explained to you. It is something immediate. It's a collective global step forwards in drug access that is reshaping this landscape of pediatric cancer care. You've seen the stars, and André has explained some of the stars in this constellation. Just in the past few months, we've seen really how the global platform for access to child cancer medicines deliver medicines to countries where treatment options have long been very scarce. And we've also seen the Act for Children initiative introduce innovative therapies to underserved populations. And we've also seen other bold actions from industry partners, such as the application for blinatumomab for consideration as WHO essential medicine for children. So together with these efforts, have the power to expand the reach of essential pediatric cancer medicines and redefine what is possible for children with cancer around the world. And it's really for the first time now, we are not just imagining equity for child cancer care, we are actively building it. And while inequities have long been most visible in the low and middle income countries, they really affect all children. When 80% of the world's children are excluded from research and clinical development, we limit our ability to discover better, safer, and more effective treatments for every child. So closing the equity gap is not only a moral imperative, it is also essential for scientific advancement. My name is Nanette Lagrange. I'm the global lead for Servier's Corporate Social Responsibility Program. We are focused on bringing our innovative proprietary medicines to children in low and middle income countries. Servier is the second largest French pharmaceutical company, but what makes the company unique is that we are owned by a not-for-profit foundation. And so without shareholders, our decisions are guided by enduring priorities, patients, the way we serve them sustainably, ethically, and with long-term impact. Importantly, in the context of today's discussion and presentation, Servier owns the only stringent regulatory authority-approved pegylated asparaginase, a long-standing cornerstone treatment for pediatric acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And these medicines are a critical component of curative treatment. We as a company are fully committed to making them available to children everywhere, regardless of geography, income, or healthcare infrastructure. And we are currently creating a brand for a highly subsidized Asparlas destined for children in low and middle income countries who currently do not have access to quality pegylated asparaginase via market authorization route. We are doing this to completely remove the financial hurdle in the way of access. And we are equally committed to doing this responsibly. Our pegylated asparaginase medicines are innovative, they're proprietary therapies, they're not generics or biosimilars, and therefore they come with complex regulatory requirements, very stringent safety standards, and handling protocols. So to give every child the best chance at cure, these standards must be upheld in every setting. Ensuring safe, effective, and compliant access is not optional for us. It is a core part of our responsibility to serve patients. And that's why we work in close collaboration with regulators, clinical experts, patient advocates, and global health partners to introduce these medicines responsibly in low and middle income countries, and then to build this foundation for sustainable access. This approach is really at the heart of the Act for Children initiative. It is to build a bridge towards this global drug access platform that Andre has explained to you. So the collaborative initiative is dedicated to improving child cancer outcomes. It's a focused public-private initiative that introduces specifically innovative child cancer medicines in low and middle income country settings in a responsible, collaborative, and sustainable way. It is hospital-based and a systems-focused model that ensures every new medicine is embedded within the quality care pathway with trained providers, appropriate protocols, patient support, and then really importantly, very rigorous pharmacovigilance. Act for Children supports also the full continuum of care, timely diagnosis, adapted protocols, skilled clinical teams, nutritional and psychosocial support, and structured training. It, like the platform, avoids a one-size-fits-all approach by co-developing local implementation plans with the hospitals, and it generates real-world evidence, informs policy, strengthens national readiness, and very importantly, we hope to create a bridge for long-term sustainable access via the Global Drug Access Platform that Andre explained so beautifully in the previous presentation for you. The aim of the initiative is then also to bring other pharmaceutical partners, especially those pharmaceutical companies with innovative medicines, the pediatric oncology community, experts, the global logistics providers, and the advocacy community to build an ecosystem needed to deliver safe and effective treatment. And once that foundation has been securely established, then the Act for Children Medicines are transitioned to this broader platform, this WHO-led global drug access mechanism, to ensure that it is a long-term sustainable integration. We are proud to collaborate with Childhood Cancer International, IDA Foundation, the International Society of Pediatric Oncology, Resonance, World Child Cancer, and the UICC-led ATOM Coalition in doing this. In the last 4 months, Act for Children has delivered $2.3 million worth of high-quality innovative medicines, in which the cost hurdle was completely removed and children got access to medicine for free, and included 5 hospitals, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Armenia, and Indonesia to follow the end of this week. More than 300 healthcare professionals have been completed training, and these results really reflect what can be done if we work together in a coordinated partnership. The unavailability of essential medicines has resulted for many years in a cascade of events that has led to poor and unacceptable outcomes for children with cancer in low and middle income countries. Diagnosis is not a priority. Treatment is, in the sentence, is therefore not a priority. Treatment is compromised. Healthcare workers lack the tools and training that they need, and families receive little or no support. But most critical, governments lack the data to build strong cancer plans. In many low and middle income countries, specialized childhood cancer centers are rare. Children are treated in general wards or not treated at all. These systemic gaps cause avoidable deaths and stand in the way of every global survival goal we set. But today, we really have a global opportunity. The pharmaceutical industry must play a central role in reversing these trends, must make drug available. Over the past 3 decades, we've learned a hard truth. Innovative medicines do not naturally reach children who need them most. In their absence, desperation takes root, and with it, the spread of counterfeit and substandard products. These not only threaten outcomes, but they erode trust. It endangers the lives of children everywhere. And this is really our moment to act. As an industry and an industry representative, I'm also calling on my other industry partners. We must take responsibility, not just for creating innovative medicines and treatments, but for ensuring that they reach every child who needs them. That means sometimes removing the financial barriers completely. That means delivering quality-assured medicines responsibly, no matter where in the world. And that means standing up for children who have been invisible in the system for far too long. As you could hear from the previous talk and also from the other speakers in today's webinar, the stars have aligned. It's really now up to us, also as an industry, as a global community, to rise to this moment and to change the world forever.
Thank you very much, Manette. It was really interesting to learn more about the Act for Children. And I took note that this is a private-public partnership, and that you also emphasized on the very important opportunity to work as closely as possible with the platform. I also took note on something I think some of the other speakers will touch on today, namely that innovation and innovative medicines don't come naturally to children. And this is a very important point, as we also have this as an ambition in our initiative. So it's not a donation program. It's not only to create accessibility to the safe and safe medicine that is at hand, but it's also to address new opportunities. So I very much appreciated that approach. So thank you very, very much. The next speaker is Dr. Scott Howard from the US. He's a deputy director at Yeo Lian Hematology Oncology Center in Armenia. And he's also a global development officer in the Hospital San Juan de Dios in Barcelona. And he will tell us more about the importance of frontline blinatumomab to improve ALL patients' outcome and the proposal to add it to WHO Essential Medicine list for children. And this is a very important task, so we look forward to listen to you, Dr. Howard. Okay, so he's still not here. Sorry about this. He has a problem with his connection. So then I think we could move to Professor Vassal, Gilles Vassal from France. He's a professor of oncology, University Paris-Saclay, head of the pediatric research program, Gustave Roussy Comprehensive Cancer Center. He's also chair of ITCC and Accelerate, and he's a past president of the European Society of Pediatric Oncology and known to many of you in the audience. And he will speak on temozolomide to the WHO Essential List for children. So very welcome, Professor Vassal.
Thank you very much, Bente. And thank you to the organizer for really inviting me to this very important forum. I'm very pleased to be here, share a few of the things we have been doing and contribute to make things better for children and adolescents with cancer. May I have the first slide? Shushan, I send you my slide. Maybe you can start sharing. Or not. Okay, there is some confusion here. I'm just asking the question whether you can share the slide I sent you or whether I should share my screen. Yes. Whoops. Whoop. Whoop. Excellent. Thank you so much. So Geva Tamanian asked me whether I could share with you one example of an essential medicine that is currently proposed to be added to the essential medicine list for children, and this drug is temozolomide. And I would like to do in the next few minutes is to share with you why and what is the reason. On the next slide. As you all know, the Essential Medicine List for Children, which is in the 9th edition, released in 2023, is an extremely important document, as already illustrated by all the initiative on the GICC global platform, but also in Europe, for example, at the time we were addressing the issue of shortages for critical medicine. So this list is very important, is revised every 2 years, and it is important that it is continuously improved to better address the needs of children and adolescents with cancer. If we look at the 2023 list, There are 361 medicines, and 40 of them are for the treatment of cancer in children. And this list is only for children up to 12 years. And these medicines are cytotoxic agents, targeted therapies, immunomodulators, hormone antihormones, and supportive cares. And for each of the medicine, the list is giving what are the available formulation and strengths and what are the indication. On the next slide, since 2020, we have been proposing modification to make the essential medicine list for children, the cancer list, more even better, to better address the needs of children. So we started with the SIOP Europe essential medicine teams, and since 2024, we are working as well with the SIOP essential medicine working group, really to provide all the information, evidence for the cancer medicine group at WHO to define whether or not a new medicine or a medicine or indication should be joining the AMLC. And when we compare at the moment the list in 2019 and the list in 2023, there has been clearly an augmentation of the information, expansion of indication for 10 cytotoxic agents, addition of 3 indications, low-grade glioma, which is one of the 6 GICC index cancer, Langerhans histiocytosis and anaplastic large cell lymphoma, and 2 medicines, namely vinorelbine and everolimus, have been added to this list for children. On the next slide. So in the previous one, currently this is a revision of the 2023 list that will be released probably in the next few months, probably during summer. And clearly we have made a proposal to introduce temozolomide for the treatment of high-grade glioma, Ewing sarcoma, neuroblastoma, and for palliative care, as well as neuroblastoma and Ewing sarcoma. Why? Because temozolomide is used in these diseases in combination with irinotecan, which is very important because this is the way we are using this at the moment. So on the next slide, why temozolomide is an essential medicine for childhood cancer. On the next slide, temozolomide is a very old cytotoxic agent, classical cytotoxic chemotherapy. This is an alkylating agent, and you can see on the screen that it is a medicine spontaneously degraded into MTIC under pH, normal physiological pH. And this is this medicine which is alkylating, generating alteration at the DNA level. And when these alterations are accumulated, then the cells die. On the next slide. And what is important is that this drug introduces a methyl group on one of the base of the DNA base, guanine. And this is important to understand that this base is no longer a normal base. And there is a mismatch, which at the moment, if it's not suppressed, will generate all the consequences in terms of cytotoxicity of the cells. And this is important because this is the way the medicine works. And there are intrinsic biological processes in the cells which are responsible for resistance to this drug. And this is this enzyme, MGMT, for methylguanine methyltransferase, which is taking the methyl group from the guanine to make the guanine normal again. So it was a little bit complex, but to share that it is a very well-known drug in the way it works, accumulation of lesion linked to alteration of the DNA generates cytotoxicity of the cells. On the next slide. It's indeed an old drug. The first approval in Europe and in the US was in 1999. And at that time, there was a company named Schering-Plough who did put forward this marketing authorization. And the treatment is was and still is 5 days a week, every 4 weeks. And what is interesting is that in the EU, the indication was glioblastoma with radiation therapy, newly diagnosed in adults, and including from the beginning the treatment of children beyond the 3 years of age, as well as an adolescent with relapse or recurrent high-grade glioma. And this is different from what it was in the US. In the US, the indication was for newly diagnosed glioblastoma in adults with radiotherapy, refractory anaplastic astrocytoma in adults, but the indication specified that pediatric use, safety, and effectiveness have not been established in pediatric patients. And interestingly, these indications in 1999 are very much now still the indication in US and Europe regarding the drug. But as you know, pediatric oncologists do not really consider only the drug which are approved in an indication, but use the drug in the pharmacy and develop clinical trials to figure out how to continue to improve children, the survival of children with cancer. And on the next slide, at the moment, where are we? The rationale for all this evaluation in high-grade glioma was very much from the so-called STOOP regimen, which is important because it gave the basis of the rationale of using this drug in high-grade glioma. This was an EORTC trial comparing temozolomide plus radiotherapy versus radiotherapy in adult patient operated from a glioblastoma. And as you can see, there is a significant approval in progression-free survival, even though no patients were cured. And this was very much the basis of the use in standard of care in adults and extrapolated in children over the last years and still now. On the next slide. So if we look at what is the situation at the moment of this medicine, after clinical trials in Europe, in North America, and other places of the country studying temozolomide, single agent, and most of the time combination for the treatment of children with cancer. And you will see that it's a very well-used drug. For high-grade glioma, include the DIPG with radiotherapy in standard of care. For the treatment of patients with a relapsed refractory neuroblastoma, in combination with a class of compound called topo-1 inhibitors, irinotecan, topotecan. And even more recently, a monoclonal antibody against anti-GD2 has been added to this combination and clearly define a better response rate for children in relapse of neuroblastoma. And this became a first standard treatment of relapse of these patients. The drug is also used in Ewing sarcoma. And of course, the drug is used as monotherapy because why? It is well tolerated. It can be given orally because it's an oral drug. The IV form is not very much used and can be used in patients to control the disease at the time there is no more curative treatment. I will not go into the detail, just give you one example, which is on the next slide, which is the combination of temozolomide, irinotecan, dinutuximab, so chemoimmunotherapy, an immunotherapy and a combination regimen. And as you can see on this slide, in this patient with a refractory relapse high-risk neuroblastoma with a probability of cure extremely low, the response rate is high, 40%, with clearly a probability of overall survival more than 40%. So showing that this drug in combination is important for the treatment of these patients. On the next slide. So in terms of toxicity, the drug is very well tolerated. It's only an hematological toxicity, leukemia, platelets, anemia, that can be done in outpatient with just blood count regularly just to monitor the dose. So very well tolerated drugs. On the next slide. It's also a drug, since it is old, with a lot of generics. You have the list here of all the generics in each of the different countries. So the drug is widely available. even though it's not prescribed or indicated for children with cancer. And on the next slide, and in addition, I told you that the indication in Europe is above 3 years of age, because clearly at the time of the evaluation, there was no appropriate formulation for children below 3 years of age. And very important, the GAP-F initiative at the OMS have been looking at pediatric drug optimization for cancer medicine, looking at which medicine would need effort to formulate and develop appropriate formulation for oral use in children. As you can see on this slide, temozolomide has been identified by GAP-F/OMS as a drug on which effort to develop and make available a pediatric formulation of temozolomide should be done in the next year. So clearly demonstrating with all this, the drug is largely used, the drug is efficient, very well tolerated on the next slide, and clearly with a need of a new formulation. So I hope I convince you that the importance of this drug to make this available on the essential medicine list for children would really help all pediatric oncologists and government to consider that this medicine is absolutely important for needs. As a conclusion, and on the next slide, I would like to thank the SIOP Europe Essential Medicine team, composed of young pediatric oncologists who are really engaged on working on this essential medicine initiative, access to medicine, which is very important at the time, all over the globe, in Europe as well. Kira Sheehan from SIOP Europe was absolutely instrumental for really put this forward, and also the SIOP International Essential Medicine Working Group, and you see the list with pediatric oncologists, pharmacists, and patient advocates from all the continent, all the SIOP International continent, really working together. And this is all these people who did put forward this application of temozolomide to the WHO Essential Medicine list. And we're at the moment waiting for the final decision that will probably be available in the next few months. So I hope it was useful to show really how the process is and the importance to continuously look at what are the medicine, the old one that should be there, the new one which are coming, because blinatumomab is extremely important, but the drug is protected and very expensive. So there is some specific measures needed for a drug from blinatumomab, which may be a little more difficult as compared to temozolomide. We're clearly showing this is important, will help children to have access to this medicine. I hope this was useful, and I thank you for your attention.
Professor Vassal, and I especially thank you because you highlighted what it takes to either introduce new medicines or to change indications. And I think the whole society is very grateful for SIOP Europe, the working group, and also the support from the working group at SIOP International. And I think what you're emphasizing, even if you didn't sort of tell a lot about that, is the importance to get a medicine on the essential medicine list. And I think that is, and this is also an opportunity for me to say that if there are any in the audience that think that we are talking about things that you have never heard of, things that you don't understand, or you have a critical question, please put your question or comment in the chat. There is a chat open as well. So thank you very much for your work. Yes,
if I may just add something, I just want to mention that the team WHO Essential Medicine is really an excellent team, and working with WHO, working with this team is absolutely great. And the way over the last 5 years we have been doing that really illustrates how committed is the WHO and this team really to make the essential medicine fit for purpose. Thank you.
Thank you very much for mentioning them, and I couldn't agree more. And at the moment, I'm less biased than before because now I am with St. Jude's, as most of you know, as a director of global engagement strategies. But I came from a position as an NCD director at WHO. And you also mentioned another branch, I would say, of WHO, and that is the GAP-F, which has been very useful and a very good instrument to explore how we can manage pediatric formulations in a very systematic way. So again, thanks a lot. So now it's my pleasure to again introduce Dr. Scott Howard. And I did introduce you, Dr. Howard, to the audience with some details before, and I'm happy now that you have been able to join us. And you will address the importance of frontline blinatumomab to improve ALL patient outcomes and the proposal to add it as well to the WHO essential medicines list for children. We are so happy to have you, and thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate the invitation and the double introduction. I'm so sorry. I'm actually at the SIOP meeting in Riyadh, but it's held in a university campus. And the university has, like many large organizations, this massive security procedure, which I hadn't noticed because I hadn't logged on to anything during the whole meeting until just now. So I'm very happy to be with you. Blinatumomab is magical as a medicine. And let's see here. And I'm very happy that it's heading for the WHO essential list. And I hope you are seeing my screen here, everybody. In the history of cancer, there have been a handful of medicines that were as important as blinatumomab. Methotrexate, 1953, mercaptopurine, 1953, asparaginase, 1978, blinatumomab, 2022. And I have 4 things I want to talk to you about. The first is blinatumomab has helped cure many people with relapsed ALL. And the studies are numerous, many publications, many different randomized clinical trials. Here's just one example. And the study is always the same, which is you take the standard therapy here, chemotherapy. This is leukemia, so chemotherapy is the only treatment that's needed for leukemia. And then add blinatumomab. And every time you do this, it's always 10% better, 15% better, 20% better. Really just depends on the situation, but anywhere from 10 to 30% better. And it's not only effective, it's actually cost effective. The big complaint about blinatumomab is that it's very expensive, and it's especially expensive in high-income countries, and it's medium expensive in middle-income countries, and it's not available in most low-income countries. So I was happy to see this cost-effectiveness study in France for relapsed patients, and here's the cost-effectiveness model, and it's overlaid on the actual data. So again, the model is the smooth curve, the data is the yellow curve, and under many different assumptions, blinatumomab is highly cost-effective. You can do sensitivity analysis related to transplant, related to the dose of blinatumomab, sharing of the blinatumomab vials, the utilities of the health state after surviving after relapsed ALL, how often you even have to change the blinatumomab infusion bag, the cost of a transplant, the population age, all these different variables, but no matter how you slice it, highly cost effective in first relapse. And you see this is the sensitivity analysis where they do a bootstrap. So each dot is, out of these thousands of dots, each dot is the likelihood of how cost effective blinatumomab is. Everything above this 0 line is good. So you see that there's maybe a 0.1% chance that it was not cost effective according to this model. But here's the likely cost effectiveness is right here. 7 years of disease adjusted life gained by using blinatumomab. So that's first relapse, that's fine. And then here's Mexico. Mexico did the same exact study, got the same exact result, highly cost effective. And here's red is the benefit in frontline and blue is the benefit in second line. So this brings me to the next topic, which is frontline use of blinatumomab. It's helped many people with relapsed ALL. It really changed everything for relapsed ALL. But for frontline ALL, we were already doing pretty well, 90% event-free survival. So that's pretty good, but that means 10% left. So we're happy with 90%, but not satisfied till we get to 100%. So what about newly diagnosed ALL? Well, the first thing you start with are the high-risk patients, people with minimal residual disease at the end of their induction. Adults are always harder to treat than children. And in this study, randomized trial of adults with MRD negative ALL, here again is this huge difference in event-free survival and overall survival. And if you go across here, I know we have a mixed audience, so you don't have to be a doctor and you don't have to be a statistician. The blue curve is chemo only, 55%. The orangish yellow curve is chemotherapy plus blinatumomab, 80-something%, let's say 80%. So a 25% benefit in survival by adding blinatumomab on top of chemotherapy in adults with newly diagnosed ALL. And what about children? Well, children come in various sizes, and the first size is the babies. Fortunately, infants don't get lymphoblastic leukemia very often, but when they do, it's horrible. Well, it has been horrible in the past. And the reason it's horrible is because they get super intense therapy. In the old days, take out the blue. What you would do for a baby with ALL would be induction treatment, protocol 1B, MARMA, Octad, maintenance, transplant in some cases, Octadad. Each of these blocks is supremely toxic for small children and infants. So we had to give these poor infants massive chemotherapy, extremely toxic therapy. A large percentage of children would even die from the toxicity of the treatment. You could only deliver this therapy in high-income countries and in really excellent centers. This would not even be, even in a high-income country, you wouldn't want to do this in a small center where the supportive care might not be quite the same as a large center that manages lots of leukemia. So what did these researchers do? They added just one cycle, 28 days of blinatumomab. And remember, blinatumomab, the main side effect is it's expensive. But when you're talking about a small baby, they don't need very much each day. And when you only give 28 days, one cycle of small children. And what was the difference in their survival? Just like the adults, from 49%, let's say 50%, up to 80%. So a 30% bonus in event-free survival or disease-free survival, similar, in children and infants who got blinatumomab compared to chemotherapy. And remember, it's not I gave up chemo and I put in blinatumomab. No, I used chemo and added blinatumomab and actually took out a little bit of the toxicity of the chemo. And here's the overall survival. Same thing, 30% bonus in event-free survival and overall survival. And this paper was actually written 5 years ago, and it's fun to read 5 years ago what people were thinking. And what they were thinking is, hey, we need to bring blinatumomab, and this now it's green instead of blue. We need to bring it into the front line, even in patients who have lower risk leukemia, not just the high risk leukemia that had already been approved back in 2022, and the ones who had positive disease after the first month of therapy. But what about the lower risk patients? So what they did was, when it says plus or minus blinatumomab, these were patients who were randomized. They flipped a coin. Half of all the children in this category got blinatumomab here and blinatumomab here. And the other half got all the white boxes, but no blinatumomab and no blinatumomab. So it was either both yes or both no. Same with this group. They got randomized to yes, yes, or no, no for the blinatumomab. Here is the top secret, highly confidential memo, only for regulatory agencies and third-party payers, because the results of this study were so dramatic that even before it was published, even before they were allowed to talk about it, they had to send this memo out to the government, to hospitals, to doctors, and to insurance companies. Of course, it's not terribly secret by the time you send something to that many people, but they were asked to be secretive. That was a couple of months ago now, so there's no secret anymore because these results are published in the New England Journal. Blinatumomab in standard risk ALL in children. And standard risk is the term for the lowest categories of risk, typically. And here it is, blue, chemotherapy, just like we've always done, which is not bad, right? Look across here. 85% of children who just get regular chemotherapy doing pretty well at 4 years. They're alive in remission and probably cured. But adding blinatumomab, again, it's about a 12% bonus. Depends on a few details, but in the average low risk and in the high low risk, same thing, basically chemo only in blue, chemo plus blinatumomab, chemo only, chemo plus blina. So again, we see anywhere from a 10% bonus to a 15% bonus in event-free survival, which means cure, in children who get blinatumomab on top of their chemo. And here's just the relapse risk. So now it's good to be low because low means less relapse. And here's 5%, 10%, 15%. So we see that there are about 13% relapses chemo only and about 4% relapses chemo plus blina. So imagine a world in which only 4% of children relapse because they have access to chemotherapy plus blinatumomab. And now imagine a world where you don't have to imagine a world where only 4% relapse, because this is today's world. We live in that world. Since December 2024, this is the world. So what do we have to do now? We have to make sure every child can get into that world. Because yeah, you can salvage a child. This is the overall survival, not the survival without relapse. And this shows that if the blue people relapse, yeah, you can then give them blina. It still works in relapse patients, and you can give them transplant because you have to after they relapse. So now they've had a bone marrow transplant, intense salvage chemotherapy, and blinatumomab, and they can do very well. But they had to suffer a lot more to do very well. So it's better to not relapse at all, and you save all the cost of the subsequent blinatumomab and all the cost of the transplant and the salvage chemotherapy. And when I say cost, I'm not talking about money. I'm also talking about money, but I'm talking about the human cost, which is very high. These salvage therapy is really toxic and quite miserable and has long-term permanent side effects. So when I talk about cost effectiveness, the first thing is the effectiveness, because the cost of life is the infinite cost, right? So first we have to save that child's life. Second, we have to save that child's life in a way that has no permanent side effects. And number three, we have to somehow find a way to pay for it in money, because we also need to make this sustainable. So the event-free survival is 10% to 30% higher, adding blinatumomab on top of chemotherapy. And whether it's 10% or 30%, it depends on the situation. In those small babies, it was 30%. In adults, it was 15%. In certain risk groups, 10%, 12%, 18%. So 10 to 30. And the great thing, though, is when you survive a frontline therapy for acute lymphoblastic leukemia, you have a normal life in every way that you can measure a human life. Same chance of graduating from school, same chance of graduating from college, same percentage having a job, getting married, having children. Anything you want to measure about somebody's life, not just are they healthy, they're equally healthy as their siblings who never had cancer, or as community controls in their school. Children in their same class who never had cancer have the same outcomes as children who had cancer and were cured with frontline therapy. So 10 to 30% more children cured. And these children are 5 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old. They have 70 or more years of life ahead of them. And like I just said, that is normal life. It's not like they're having to live, with lots of extra support. They don't need physical therapy or cognitive therapy or psychotherapy or any therapy. They do, but they don't need it any more than any of the rest of us need it who never had leukemia as a child. And of course, each of us needs some different support as we go along, but it's the same rate of support that they need. So when you look at this, it's not just 70 years of life, it's actually 70 plus disease-adjusted years of life for 10 to 30% more children. Nobody's ever published a cost-effectiveness study of blinatumomab in the front line because we're all still celebrating that it works so well, but this is coming soon. So now if 100% of patients get blinatumomab in frontline therapy, the first question people ask me is, will we even have enough blinatumomab to go around? If we use it all up in frontline, what are we going to do for the patient who relapses? Will we be stuck there with no medicine? And the answer is, it's tricky, but there is enough blinatumomab to go around. Amgen has really jumped on this because the need went way up now that we know we have to give it in frontline. But the good news is, if you give blinatumomab in frontline, you don't need blinatumomab in second line because hardly anybody relapses. Instead of 15%, 4%. Instead of 17%, 7%. Instead of 30%, 10%. So if you have so much fewer relapse, you actually need less blinatumomab in the second line setting. But there will be a period of time, which is right now, when everybody's starting to use blinatumomab in the front line, but we still have patients treated 3, 4, 2 years ago who might come in with a relapse and need second line therapy. So for this short time, before we reap the benefits of frontline blinatumomab, we have to just really be on our guard to make sure there's enough vials. But the good news is, in the future, if we treated everybody frontline, we would actually use about the same amount of blinatumomab as we did a year ago, treating everybody in relapse. It's about the same amount, but we would save a lot more lives. So in other words, the cost would be the same, but the effectiveness would be way higher. So the cost effectiveness would also be higher, because if you raise the effectiveness and hold the cost steady, you increase the cost effectiveness. My third point, and we're winding up here, is that we have to combine blinatumomab with existing therapies to achieve the most benefit. We do not want to leave behind methotrexate and mercaptopurine from 1953. These are still supremely effective for acute lymphoblastic leukemia in children and adults. And they cost less than $1 per dose of either of these. Prednisone, dexamethasone, 1955, 1958, cyclophosphamide, all of these medicines are terrific. And all of these are already on the essential medicines list, every single one of these except for blinatumomab, which was approved in frontline use for certain patients in 2022, and frontline use in almost every patient will be coming soon. May already have come, I'm not sure. So if we take all of these cancer cells, and the color represents their chemosensitivity, and this is their CD19 and CD22. I'll explain more about that in a second. But most patients, you give them mercaptopurine from 1953, you give them methotrexate from 1953, asparaginase from 1978, all the other classics, and you get rid of that leukemia. Back in the day, still 80% of people could be cured just with the basic classic things. But, and with that, we got really good survival rates. So, went from the 60s to the 70s to the 80s to the 90s to the present day, but still that 10% that we couldn't cure. So what about blinatumomab? Well, blinatumomab is attacking the CD19 cells. And if you think this is going to be technical, you are wrong, because I'm just going to illustrate that these cells up here are the ones that have a lot of CD19, and these down here have only a little bit. So if we give blinatumomab, these are considered positive and these are considered negative for CD19. Same for CD22. These are positive for CD22 and these are negative, because you got to draw a line somewhere. So somebody drew a line and said above here is positive, below here is negative, even though there's people near the line on either side that aren't that different from each other. And by people, I mean each of these is a leukemic cell. So now we gave blinatumomab, we wiped out the most positive cells who had the most CD19. Let's give some more blinatumomab. All right, we're wiping out that leukemia. Another, wiping it out. Now these are the cells that are the lowest amount of CD19. One more blina. Hey, are we going to be able to cure this patient with just blinatumomab? Maybe so. Let's give one more cycle. Uh-oh, they relapsed. And when they relapse, all the new cells are low in CD19. So the same story for inotuzumab, which is another very important treatment for acute lymphoblastic leukemia. But now we're killing off the CD22 cells. And again, and again, and again. Maybe we can cure this patient with just inotuzumab. Nope, they relapsed, and the relapse is now CD22 negative. So giving just one medicine for acute lymphoblastic leukemia is a terrible idea. So we are not talking about getting rid of the good chemo and just putting in blinatumomab. So don't get rid of the good to add the great. We want to keep all the good and add the great. And inotuzumab we'll talk about another day once the studies come out. But if we just use those two together, hey, maybe it would work. Maybe we could cure the patient. But instead, probably there will still be some cells left, and we would wish we had given the classic chemotherapy like asparaginase or like mercaptopurine to wipe out this last cell. So I hope I've convinced you that blinatumomab is very important for people with relapsed ALL, adults and children. It's also extremely effective for newly diagnosed adults and children with ALL, newly diagnosed. And we have to keep our old classic therapy until we get to 100%. Please don't argue with me. When we're at 100%, you can argue all you want. Maybe we could take something out and still have enough. That's an argument. I can't wait till we can have that argument. But for now, we need the chemo plus the blinatumomab. And the main thing we need is how are we going to get this blinatumomab for every human? So that's why we put in this proposal, and you have to just list, I just listed myself here, but there were about 50 people who helped work on this. And how do you know? You see that many of them also wrote letters to the WHO to support the inclusion of this blinatumomab. And so here's the executive summary. Treatment of pediatric patients with CD19 positive frontline, relapsed or refractory lymphoblastic leukemia, because this medicine is really important for frontline relapsed and refractory patients. They have to have CD19, of course. And so our team did some math here to say what happens in high-income countries. 15,000 children with ALL, 87% cured with frontline therapy, 7% cured with second-line therapy, and 6% who die from leukemia or toxicity. So we're losing 900 out of these 15,000. But in low and middle income countries, right now today, or not right now today, a few months ago in December, we were losing about 40,000 out of the 85,000 children in low and middle income countries. So 48% were being lost either to leukemia or toxicity. If we can assume universal access to blinatumomab, we can reduce this loss down to 24%, even in the current situation with the current supportive care, exactly as things are now. If the only thing we changed was yes, blinatumomab instead of no blinatumomab, we would cut in half the number of children lost. So from 48% down to 24%. And here is the other things we have to work on: getting a correct diagnosis, getting a diagnosis at all, getting a correct diagnosis, being able to finish the treatment without abandoning, not dying of toxicity, and not having a relapse. So everything I've been talking about is avoiding relapse, the purple, and avoiding toxicity, because blinatumomab is less toxic than some of the other treatments. But it does depend on all these other factors being present. And you already heard from Annette about the efforts of the Act for Children program. And Act for Children is working on every color here, not just relapse, which we need blina for, and not just toxic death, we need blina for that. But all of these other things are also part of that. And so I also want to really thank Servier for their support for these other aspects, including diagnosis and patient support and so on. So the best time to use blina is in the front line. The worst time is after 4 relapses. So best frontline, first relapse, second relapse, third relapse, fourth relapse. So please, frontline, that's the best line. And I want to finish here with the cost effectiveness in frontline will be even better. Here's the things that are being added to the EML or being considered for addition to be added for addition to the EML. And the period of open commentary is still open. It's open till Friday. Please don't turn in your letter on Friday because, you know, time zones, we're all living in different places. Turn it in on Thursday. Today would be even better, today or tomorrow. And where do? You write your letter, you send it to the EML secretariat at who.int. Or if you want to send an email to me, I can send you some examples, or you can go and download the examples that have already been seen. So I really, really thank you, Shushan and Gevorg, for setting up this meeting. I think this was a terrific idea. It could not be more timely. We need temozolomide, we need rituximab, we need blinatumomab. I really appreciate the WHO. Bente, I'd love to see you over on the St. Jude's side. Welcome to the other family, but I know you're still part of the WHO family because of your many friendships over the years. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And what a compelling and fantastic presentation. So I took note that normal life is in sight. And I also really like the way you systematically use cost effectiveness in all stages. I think this is the way we need to convince not only the WHO to include it in the EML list, but you mentioned as well in the bypass that, you know, it's also about money for the drugs through the government. And I think using systematically DALI as well is really a way to go. So thank you so much. I think it was a beautiful story, and it will have a beautiful impact when every piece falls into place. So thank you so much.
And can I add one more thank you? I can't believe I didn't thank Amgen. They massively supported this application. They provided data on blinatumomab approvals in every country, the cost in every country from public data sources, thousands of hours of work that they saved me by providing these public data sources. They also have a strong commitment to access. They have a whole group called Access. And so this is what motivated me. Filling things out for WHO is a very long process. And I was highly motivated because they said, once we are an essential medicine, it gives us even more power to provide access. So I want to raise my bottle here to Amgen for having an access program in the first place, which brings them nothing. It loses them money, it gives them more risk, but it brings them the satisfaction of saving more lives. So I think we have to always have our water bottle raised.
No, thank you for that. And I think that's also a very valid point. And you heard that Dr. Ilbawi Andrea said, you know, we have already mentioned all the partners we have to the platform so far. But of course, we are also working with a more systematic approach to, I would say, appreciate and recognize the public-private partnerships that lies behind many of the sort of uprunning and upcoming drugs. And I think we need to be systematic. And thank you very much for also recognizing Amgen in this case. And we heard also from Manette that she had also a very good sort of public-private partnership. So this is great. We will then introduce our last speaker, and that is a very important introduction from, we have to say, really one of the biggest countries in the world, namely from China. So we will listen to Dr. Shizhou Zhang, and she is a professor and director of the Department of Pediatric Oncology in Sun Yat-sen University, Sisu Cancer Center, and also deputy chairman of the Blood Disease Translational Research Committee and standing committee member of the Hematological Tumor Committee and Chinese Anti-Cancer Association. So she will talk about the pediatric cancer essential medicines and medication and innovation in China. So we are very, very happy that you could join us today and sincerely look forward to your presentation. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Today, I'm very glad to take part in this virtual Onco Daily virtual forum. It's my pleasure. So can you hear me? It's okay? Okay, so my topic is the pediatric cancer essential medications and the innovation medications in China. So it's my outline. I will introduce common chemotherapy agent in pediatric cancer, liposomal agent, targeted therapy of antibody, a checkpoint inhibitor, and the first-in-class bio-specific antibodies in China, and the small molecular targeted drugs, epigenetic drugs in pediatric patient treatment, and the support care in pediatric oncology, and others like the FMO. So this slide showed many the conventional chemotherapy in China. It is all covered by the medical insurance, and we also have the Neurolabin. Neurolabin is produced by Chinese company, and we led a clinical trial about the efficacy and the safety of Neurolabin injection in patients with T-cell, T lymphoblastic leukemia and T lymphoblastic lymphoma. That's the multi-center clinical trial, and I'm the leading PI in China. So in China, we also use the liposomal agent in pediatric patients. It's the innovations in toxicity reduction. So in China, we have liposomal doxorubicin, liposomal toxin and liposomal irinotecan. And okay. So for the doxorubicin, we have completed the phase 1 study and published our data. And now we are ongoing the doxorubicin liposomal combined with irinotecan versus VIT regimen in the treatment of pediatric rhabdomyosarcoma. And the another liposomal agent is liposomal Maxtron. And we completed the phase 1 study, and now we summarized our data, and then we are conduct the phase 1 clinical trial. To the this clinical trial is VIM combined with VIT in pediatric patients in the relapsed and refractory soft tissue sarcoma. And in recent years, we also have the liposomal irinotecans, and we also carry out the clinical trial in pediatric patients. So the it's irinotecan liposomes combined with temozolomide and with cristitine in the treatment of the pediatric patient with the solid tumor. So this is the data of the phase 1 study of the liposomal doxorubicin. And we can see with the RP2D command dose is 30 milligram. And we can see we use this drug combined with CTX and the VCR. The ORR rate was 50%, and the DCR is 92%. And the 12 patients achieved CR. And even sarcomas, rhabdomyosarcomas, and the Wilms tumors have good effect. And we also detect the biomarkers, and the TP53 BCOL and stage 2 mutation were associated with the worst PFS. And this data we published in the last year in the eClinical Medicine Journal. So let's introduce the targeted therapy of antibody in China. Now we have the anti-CD20 antibody and rituximab is imported in 1998 to China, and now, but in recent 10 years, Chinese drug company produced the Honican and others, the anti-CD antibodies, and now many pediatric patients, especially the mature B-cell lymphomas, we use the domestic CD20 antibodies, and we also have the brentuximab in China and anti-CD79 molecular antibody in China. And now we will conduct the clinical trial in the use the glofitamab with the CD20 and the CD3 bispecific antibody used in the mature relapse and refractory mature B-cell non-Hodgkin lymphoma. So this is the international multi-center clinical trial, and I am the leading PI in China. And we also have the anti-GD2 molecular antibody, the nextumomab, and then nextumomab beta in China. So here is the blinatumomab. It's more than 20 clinical trial in China, and some published the data, and some the clinical trial is ongoing. It's many covered the pediatric and young adult patients. And so this is published data from center in China used blinatumomab, and the patient aged from 15 years to 65 years. So here the anti-GD2 monoclonal antibody clinical trial in China. For the dantaximab beta in China, we have 2 clinical trials. One is complicated as a phase 1 study to evaluate the safety and the pharmacokinetics of this drug in Chinese patient with high-risk neuroblastoma, and another is now is recruiting the patient now. And for the nataximab in China, now we have 3 clinical trial. One is adding nataximab in treatment of pediatric high-risk or refractory relapse neuroblastoma. I am the leading PI. So you can see this is our clinical trial design. We use nataximab combined or without PD-1 antibodies to treat the higher risk or the recurrent or refractory neuroblastoma, and where the primary endpoint is ORR, the second endpoint is DCR, EFS, OS, and adverse event. Until now, we have enrolled about 100 patients. So we think after 2 years follow-up, we can summarize the data about this clinical trial. So this is the checkpoint inhibitors. We have pembrolizumab, nivolumab, and atezolizumab in China. But we also have a domestic agent. Now we have about 17 PD-1 antibody produced by Chinese drug company now is available in China. So we also have the in-class drugs, the bispecific antibody, like PD-1 CTLA-4 bispecific antibody and the PD-1 VEGF biospecific antibodies. So in our center, we carry out 3 clinical trials. We used sintilimab plus AVD in pediatric low or mediate risk Hodgkin lymphoma. It's a phase 2 study, and we completed. And we also used the PD-1 antibody with the standard chemotherapy regimen as the neuroadjuvant therapy for children and adolescents with intermediate or high-risk rhabdomyosarcoma. This is the phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trial. So we summarize the PD-1 and the PR1 in children cancers, and then we design our clinical trial. Our team completed the first phase 1 study of the Chinese domestic PD-1 inhibitor of in pediatric tumor in China. So this is published data. You can see the Chinese domestic PD-1 antibody is safe in the pediatric patient. We used in the NKT cell lymphoma, diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, even sarcoma, and the thymomas. And so some people get CR and PR, and the drug is well tolerated, and about 90% patients experienced at least one treated related adverse events, but no treated related serious adverse event occurred. So we use this drug, the Chinese domestic PD-1 inhibitor, combined with the chemotherapy to treat patients with rhabdomyosarcoma. And now we have completed the phase 1 study, which included 20 patients. So we can see no DLT was observed at any of the dose group, and the pathological CR is about 33%, and no immuno-related adverse events were of the most of the immuno-related adverse events were of grade 1 or 2. Now the phase 2 clinical trial is a multi-center. Now it's ongoing. So what you can see, other Chinese centers use PD-L1 to treat the tissue sarcomas, and some have published the data. So we also have the bio-specific antibodies, the PD-1, CTLA-4, and the company now discuss with our pediatric oncologist. We discuss what maybe these new drugs will be first in class, have the potential to treat patients with pediatric cancers. So this is the Chinese bio-specific antibodies. We are planning to carry out the clinical trial in the pediatric tumor patient. So here is the small molecular targeted drugs. We have a BCL2 inhibitors. You can see this is in China, some centers carry out the clinical trial, and we also have the domestic agent APG 2575 for clinical trial in leukemia or solid tumor like neuroblastoma. So the APG 115 along or in combination with APG 2575 in children with refractory or recurrent neuroblastoma and solid tumor now is ongoing. So I am the leading PI of this clinical trial. And we also have ABL TKI inhibitors, which is we have a domestic agent like dasatinib or elvarobatinib. It's also produced by the Chinese drug companies, and we also have the clinical trials which published the data on the last year, the ASH meetings abstract, and we also used the second generation TKI dasatinib to treated patients with pH positive ALL, and the data have been published in JAMA Oncology in 2020. This was a Chinese doctor leading these clinical trials. And we also have the ALK inhibitors used in pediatric cancers. The first generation, we also have the domestic drug anacritinib, and the second generation alectinib, and the third generation lorlatinib. And some drugs have been carry out the clinical trial in pediatric patient with ALK fusion positive solid or CNS tumors. So this retinib therapy for relapse or refractory of ALK positive AL cell children is carried out by our center. I'm the leading PI, and we have finished these clinical trials. 9 patients with ALK positive AL cell was enrolled, and we can see the OR is 100%, and the safety is it's good. So this data we have summarized and submitted to the high quality journals now. So NTRK inhibitor is also used in pediatric cancer in China. So we have lorlatinib, entrectinib, and etc. We also have the second generation drugs, which produced by Chinese drug company like TQB 3811, ICP 723, which is carried out. The clinical trial is ongoing. The study of the ICP 723, we have two clinical trial. I'm also the leading PI of these two clinical trial, and we have completed the phase 1 study of the children cohort and adolescent cohort, and we have submitted this data to the CELP meeting in these years. We also reported lorlatinib resistance in Chinese pediatric tumor, and which published in 2023 in Annals Oncology, and this work is this is our team's work. So in China, we also use anti-angiogenic drugs in pediatric cancers. We have bevacizumab and pazopanib, and we also have the domestic drug like apatinib, lenvatinib, and anlotinib. We also have many several clinical trials in use these drugs to treat patients with soft tissue tumor like rhabdomyosarcomas. You can see the neuroblastoma. You can see apatinib combined with IT regimen for the treatment of recurrent or refractory pediatric neuroblastoma is ongoing now, and we have enrolled 111 patients now, and we summarized the interim data to the ANR meeting this year, and we have get an email that we will give oral presentation in this May. So we also some hospital in China also carry out the clinical trial, use PD-1 or PD-L1 inhibitor and lenvatinib in the hepatoblastoma patient. Also, here are the anti-angiogenic drugs. The clinical trial, we can see the even sarcoma and use with the refractory or and other refractory sarcoma. So this work, this phase 1 clinical trial is carried out by our team. We used anlotinib to treat patients with recurrent or refractory sarcoma. So this work is complicated. Now we are complicated minor revision, and I think it promising to publish in the high quality journals. We used anlotinib to the refractory or recurrent sarcomas. Sarcomas all is used as the maintenance treatment in this patient, and in this cohort, with the 11 cases remain the disease free. 2-year PFS is about 61%, and the 2-year OS with 90%. So now we are designed the phase 2 clinical trial to use anlotinib to treat the patient with the rhabdomyosarcoma as the maintenance therapy. So other inhibitors in China it's available is mTOR inhibitors, EZH2 inhibitors, and PARP inhibitors, BRAF inhibitors, and some many of these are the domestic drugs and the MET inhibitors, and we also have the CDK4/6 inhibitors, and some is carry out clinical trials in the metastatic sarcomas, including the adolescent patient. And we also have the MDM2 inhibitors. It's APG115. So use this the new drugs. We carry out a clinical trial and to the patient with recurrent or refractory neuroblastoma or other solid tumor in children, and with the APG2575. So in this clinical trial, we have enrolled 16 patients. So we also have the Merck inhibitors. So we also use the HDAC inhibitor, the epigenetic drugs, to treat patients with tumor. So here the clinical trial carried out in China, which concluded the lymphoma and other solid tumors. This clinical trial is conducted by our team. We use the domestic HDAC inhibitor to treat patients, combined with toxic with a patient to treat a patient with recurrent or refractory neuroblastoma, and we have enrolled 50 patients and are reported in the ASCO and the CELP meetings. So we have many supportive care in pediatric oncology, like the ondansetron oral solute film and for patent, and we have also some drug to support some drug to as the hematologic support, like GHG CSF, PEG CSF, etc., and others like TPO, short time or long time, or TPO-RA. This drug also have carry out the clinical trial in children, in pediatric patients. We have completed some clinical trial, and some clinical trial is ongoing now. So we also have DFMO in China in these years, and I'm responsible for the clinical trial of DFMO in the neuroblastoma patient in China. So I use one slide, introduce the China pediatric drug reimbursement policy. We can see 10 critical disease like leukemia, congenital heart is covered by our government, and some commercial insurance have a very covered many patients, like CAR-T, like RNDL excluded drugs. So patients, the children can benefit from this policy. So that's thank you for listening. That's my introduction. Thank you.
Zhang,
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I think you gave us a very comprehensive overview, and I'm super happy to learn about the progress. So congratulations to you and your team as well. So I will have to leave you now, but I just wanted to make a more general remark. What really made me happy today is, of course, that we are all focused on both survival and also how survivorship is going to look like in the future. And I think we have so much present in our mindset that 90% of the people living or actually getting cancer, of the 400,000 per year, is living in low and middle income settings. And it's been mentioned by several of you. And only 30% of those in those kind of settings are really getting to the point of survival. So we have a huge disparity. And I think the way you have laid out all your interventions today is really showcasing the common objective of all of us. And I would say also the common objective of what we have focused on in the platform. What you have also highlighted is the importance of stakeholders, of partnership, and the ability to change all of this if we change the access not only to care but also to medicines in an uninterrupted manner. So it's not enough to, of course, send the first vial to the countries, but also to have sustained support with high quality medicines. So I think we are ready to make the big change, and I'm extremely happy to have been your chairperson today. And I'm also happy now to give the floor to Shushan, that will lead us through the last part of the program. And as my last comment, thank you very much to OncoDaily. I think that you give us this platform to discuss. It is of such a huge importance. So thank you, all of you, and have a beautiful day, morning, and night. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bente. You did the chairing of the sessions perfectly, and thank you so much for being with us today. And I would like to ask our speakers to still remain, because at the end we will have the discussion. And now I will introduce our last speaker, Dr. Anna Avakian from Armenia. She is the head of Karina Cancer Predisposition Clinic, pediatric oncologist, hematologist at Pediatric Cancer and Blood Disorders Center of Armenia, Iulian Hematology and Oncology Center. So Dr. Anna, the floor is yours. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Shushan, for a nice presentation. Just 1 second to share my screen and to be sure that my sound and the screen is shared. I don't know why I can't share it. Just 1 second. Yeah. It looks like it should work now. Is it? Okay, I guess it works. Sorry, Shushan, can you hear me and see my slides? Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for the OncoDaily for initiating this very important forum to talk about this important topic. So I'm glad to share Armenia's journey within the Act for Children initiative, which is a global movement with a deeply local impact. I'm going to share and we had where was taken by our team and by all the supporting companies that make this program possible. So as a background, I'm going to present the situation in Armenia. So per year, we have around 100 to 120 new pediatric cancer cases. Since 2019, all cases or of oncology and hematology was centralized at pediatric cancer and blood disorder centers, and being and representing a low and middle income country, for us yet access to high cost medications remains limited, although still the most part of the medicines is covered by NGOs, by the charitable foundations. And although, as an example, the pegaspargine was previously available for our country, and it was, however, there was concerns. Sorry. Shushan told that the presentation is not going. So, as I mentioned, pegaspargine was available in our country and for our patients. However, there were concerns about the quality, and compared to the CRVA, the pegaspargine provided with by the CRVA company, of course, there is more trust to the quality of the CRVA of the pegaspargine of CRVA company. And then when it comes to blinatumomab and other highly expensive medications, we still have to prioritize patients who has the high risk of the relapse, the patients who has severe toxicities, and so it is and because it is the high financial burden to charitable foundation, so not all the patients have the access to the newly and more effective medications and immunotherapy. And before starting and joining the Act for Children initiative, we did the program assessment to identify the potential causes of treatment failure, which was guided and supervised by Professor Scott Howard, and together we identified all the potential causes of the toxic death, treatment abandonment, and relapse and remission, and identified that Act for Children program is perfectly fits all the gaps that exist in our setting, and which, of course, Manette previously detailed the Act for Children program. However, I would like to emphasize again the program objectives, which are improve access to essential cancer medications, support national strategies to reduce treatment abandonment and inequity, implement multi-center studies, strengthen the clinical and research workforce. Also, one of the most important part was the capacity building, enhancing training and onboarding also the strengthening the capacity by provision of different equipment, establishment of registry-based researches and data quality, and of course foster the cross-country collaboration. And so in October 2024, Armenia joined the Act for Children initiative, which was represented by our center, Ural Hematology and Oncology Center, and also the research and organizational work was also supported by Immuno-Oncology Research Institute. So I would like to share what achievements we have by this moment. And in January 2025, CRV and Resonance team visited our hospital for having many goals. First of all, to present the project to our team, and also to conduct a site assessment to identify gaps and prioritize needs for improving diagnostic and capacity building, conducted different trainings for our team, and what is the most important achievement of this project by this time is having enabling use of Pegosperiginase, high quality Pegosperiginase produced by CRV company for our children and adolescents with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Also, some multi-center studies have been implement. We have already launched a multi-center retrospective cohort study on treatment failure and toxicity in low and middle income countries. And at this moment, again, lead and supervised by Professor Scott Howard, prospective treatment protocol for acute lymphoblastic leukemia is in development stage. Which is also was very important for the conducting high quality research and having an international registry. We had recruited a data manager who support this whole workflow. And as I mentioned in our program assessment, one of important points was treatment abandonment, and I should mention that the main cause of treatment abandonment was not that some families still choose to get their treatment abroad. So in this situation, patient navigator, not only for the treatment abandonment, but also for supporting families in all stages of the treatment, their role is really important. And so at this moment, we also started the establishment of the international registry. And so I could say that many achievements, also many goals has already achieved, but the vision ahead is expanding access to essential cancer medications. And Armenia also recently in December 2024 was became the focus country for the global platform for access to childhood cancer medicines. And we hope that through this through that program, Armenia will get for access to other medications, as Dr. Scott already mentioned. We will get the border access to the medications like blinatumomab. Also, as I mentioned, after the site assessment, we have several projects and ideas and strategies how to enhance infrastructure to support diagnostic data system and coordinated care. as one of also most important goals is the increased participation in multi-center studies, which are already in process, but also some of them are in process of development. And also we aiming strengthen national strategies to treatment abandonment without travel, navigation and support, and to enhance registry system for real-time data use in national planning and policy. By this slide, I would like to use this opportunity to express our gratitude to all the companies that involved in this initiative and support our team for helping us building a more equitable future for children with cancer.
Thank you so much, Anna, for sharing the experience in Armenia so greatly. And now I would like to introduce our last speaker, Dr. Roberto Vasquez, pediatric oncologist, Division of Hematology and Oncology at Hospital Nacional de Niños Benjamin Bloom at San Salvador. So welcome, Dr. Vasquez.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
can you see my screen?
Just a second. Yeah, now we
can. You see it? Hello? Okay, I guess you can see my screen and.
Yeah, we can see. Just may I ask you to put it on the presenter mode?
Okay, I will do it. Now you can see it better? Okay. Can you hear me well? Okay. El Salvador is in Central America. We have been working in different protocols and we have been trying to improve our outcomes since 1994. I have a picture that is an historical picture. And before 1994 in El Salvador, there was not a program for cancer, for pediatric cancer. And we were part of outreach program of St. Jude's in that time. And just after 5 years, just having a full-time dedicated personnel and a space and infrastructure with like 24 beds, we start to have some.
So sorry for interruption, Dr. Vasquez, but we are still not able to see your slides. It's on the first slide. Could you put it on the presenter mode so that it goes?
It's in the presenter mode.
We are seeing only the first page without presenter mode.
Okay, sorry. I will finish here and we'll try it again. Okay. Thank you. I will try to share my screen again. Now can you see my slide? It's the second one.
Just a second. Yes, we can see it's the second one.
I will put it in the presentation mode. Let's see if we can continue. Can you see it?
Wonderful, thank you so much.
Okay, so this is an historical photo when we started the program in 1994 with the outreach program at the beginning. And during all this time, we had been being supported by people like Scott Howard, that is part of Resonance like here. And we start to do a program in a only tertiary center for pediatrics in El Salvador, which is Hospital Bloom. And after 5 years of start everything, we report in Lancet, my boss in that time, that the outcome was increased in a very important way. So we passed to have data that the survival was less than 5% to 50%. That was very important at that moment. Demographics in El Salvador are changing. This is our last population description that our government has done. And since like the rate of natality has decreased, and we had more patients in a teenager age, and we have less patients in the base of the pyramid. This is very important because this is make us change that everything is going to change in the future. What we know that in the high-income countries like St. Jude's, the outcomes from example leukemia has increased a lot. And in the
Yes, Dr. Vasquez, so sorry again for interruption, but still we are on the second slide. Maybe we can leave the presenter mode and go slide by slide.
Okay, I guess it's better. Okay.
Thank you.
Can you see this one?
Yes, we are on the third slide right now. Could you slide it to the third? Yeah,
it's
so
not
that we can see if that works.
My presentation is very short. So this is demographics. In El Salvador, our population is changing, and now the rate of natality has decreased a lot in the last 3 or 4 years. And now we are facing another group of patients that we have to take care of. And this is very important. That's why it's very important to follow things like demographics, like our national register that we have now, and our hospital register, because we have to follow these patients and to know what is happening with them during all the time we follow them. And that can last 10 years or 15 years, and this is very important. Let's see. Can you see the fourth one?
No, we can't.
Okay, I will go one by one. Okay. This is just, this is, this is a very known slide that every oncologist has followed, and that is the St. Jude outcomes in acute lymphoblastic leukemia, how they doing continued protocols, they have improved a lot, and having a question that they have respond during the period of time that the studies have developed, and they have give us all the knowledge to know how can we treat people, how can we treat patients. But in low-income countries, we have done some kind of homework with that. And you can see this is the surveillance of our cases in El Salvador. And the data comes from ROPESAL, which is the Pediatric Register for Cancer in El Salvador, that is part of the hospital, part of the Ministry of Health, part of the foundation. We have been working together on this group, and we have improved in some specific kind of cancer. We need to improve in another that there's not so good results and outcomes. If you can see the cures that are in the base of the slides in the Kaplan-Meier, you can see we have acute myeloid leukemia, and we have some brain tumors that are not enough satisfactory with the technology, with the drugs we have for them, and this is very important. What we know in El Salvador, we know that when we talk about the prioritized kind of cancer, we have achieved some kind of good outcomes. And for example, in acute lymphoblastic leukemia, we have achieved more or less 75% of survival. In lymphoma Hodgkin is a good, we have a good results. In low-grade gliomas, we have good results because we have a very good communication with the neurosurgeons that are in this are fundamental. and Wilms tumor, retinoblastoma, Burkitt lymphoma. We are doing our job, but the others, there are not so many changes to have improved. What have achieved in the last 5 years with help industry, help people from Serbia. For example, in Central America, and this is our data from Central America, you can see what happened when we add P-asparagines to our protocols. And we have a protocol with 3 base risk branch. And you can see how even with very early time of follow, because it has like 1 year, there are some data that seems that with P-asparagines, that was coming from the donation from Serbia, we had improved our different branch of risk. And this was very important because in our country, we have not, and in Central America, access to P-asparagines. And this was like an initiative that started by Serbia as a company. Now is access, which is implying more drugs for more illness, more cancer types, and we want to be part of this. And you can see, but this is important for oncologists, but there is another group behind us, like sick oncologists, like nurses that are they have very good opinion about what happened with P-asparagines. Even we had faced some toxicity related to the therapy. We have been improved in a little time, in very short period of time of outcomes, and this is very important for the future. This is just an example of what is happening in Central America. What we would like to do in the future, we would like to increase our survival, but we are not by sure that this is not just a protocol problem. We have to solve all the problems around the patients to do more chemotherapy, to be more intensive. But for sure, we know that we can have access to drugs that can help us to that. And drugs that can help us to that are blinatumomab, but can reduce the intensity of the chemotherapy. When I was thinking about this meeting, I was thinking about what could be the advantage to have this drug in our countries for our patients. Well, we really know that the intensity of the chemotherapy is fundamental, but we need to improve very well our capacity of care of patients. Now we know that blinatumomab that can be an option in the future. We don't need to be so intensive with other drugs, and we can have good results. And even in the context of patients that could need a transplant, we don't have transplant available in most of the countries of Central America. Blinatumomab offers the chance to send a patient for an incredible effort out of our region to a transplant in the best conditions. That's why we have to think about it. So we are part of this initiative. We know that we can be able to have access to these kinds of chemotherapy. And I was thinking, even in acute myeloid leukemia, now we know that, for example, venetoclax can be used in low-intensive regimens and incredibly increase the possibilities of the cure in that way. So it's another of the pathologies where we need to improve, and it could be part of this opportunity to access. Transplant is still a very long distance from us. We have to do a lot of things. We have to work in other chances and in other areas. But it's part of the discussion, and we have to talk with the discussion with all the data. Well, we know that this could be available in the future, but not in the very short period of time. But Blina could be a real opportunity for our patients in the forthcoming years. And talking about CAR T cells is a possibility. That is another chance, but it's far away from our possibilities. So we are very happy to be part of the access and to talk about that. And every time we talk about cancer, about opportunities, we know that we have to continue to learn about cancer. Cancer is incredible teacher. He makes us suffering a lot with our patient, but we learn every day, not only about the biological of the illness, we know about the reality of the human being around this big problem, and we have to be involved in that. When I was thinking about that, those are my thoughts to start the idea. I believe that El Salvador and Central America is doing a very good homework, preparing national registrations, preparing conditions to have an improving care for the patients. And we have some data that makes us feel comfortable to think about the future and to think about new drugs available for our patients that at the moment are not available because of the prices, because of the accessibility in the region. But we can go over that and find a way. Pegasparaginase is a good example. This is a drug that is not have no registration, commercial registration, but had been accepted by our national drugs regulatory entities because it's part of the protocol that is for care of patient free of shares, and that is very important because show us that there is a way always to get new opportunities in access for our patients. This is all I have to share with you, and if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vasquez. Regardless of technical issues, thank you for sharing the experience and your view. And now I would like to open the discussion with all our speakers that were involved, and I would like to ask all of them to turn on their cameras. And right now we have more than 300 attendees at the moment. So we have a good audience. So please turn on your cameras and we will go online now, and Dr. Howard will chair this session. Thank you.
Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you, Shushan, and thank you, Oncodeli, for setting this up. The floor is yours, dear friends. Also in the chat, please put the chat. We can see them, or Shushan can pass them on from the chat. So please put your questions there. And Shushan, can they unmute their microphones, or they have to just put in the chat?
They are already unmuted.
Oh, great. Let's release everybody. Please make your comments.
Scott, are you asking us or the audience?
I would prefer the audience to go first, but I did want to say one thing because it was such a pleasure to hear you, Professor Zhang, one more time. We're sitting together in Saudi Arabia, actually, or we're sitting separately in Saudi Arabia, where she presented some really interesting data on the sarcoma part. But I was just thinking of, you know, China has helped the world so much, first with massive manufacturing capacity for generic drugs, the next thing you know, with massive research capacity accruing on clinical trials, and next thing you know, with massive drug development capacity with like so many new molecules that even in 20 minutes you can't even say them all briefly. So I really appreciate it. And I wonder, Prof. Zhang, is there a chance to get these out of China? How can these medicines escape from China and help the rest of us? Ishwo, can you hear me? Uh-oh. Are we on mute, Shushan?
So you mean that we have some new drug in China?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How can we get it out of China? Because we all need these things also, especially in middle and low income countries.
We want to complete the phase 1 trial in our Chinese center, and then we hope to push the drug company to conduct the multi-center or international clinical trial. international clinical trial, include more countries, and then we can push the drug to how to say more indications, getting indications in pediatric cancer. I think that's our way to go.
Well, we will really appreciate it here in Armenia and Saudi Arabia and El Salvador and France and Africa when you get to that point. So I appreciate it. Shushan, can you monitor the chat? I can't actually see it.
I think some drug company, they were willing to invest to this field, to the pediatric cancer field. To focus or pay more attention to the pediatric cancer patient, and then they will wait together to push the clinical trial from phase 1 to phase 2, from single center to multi-center to international center. I think so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Scott, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
I think you presented a very compelling evidence of the importance of blinatumomab for children with ALL in relapse in the frontline setting. You showed some cost effectiveness, but it remains an expensive drug, even though the price may be a little bit lower in some countries than the others. And I will share that even in Europe, where the drug is approved, there are countries where blinatumomab is not available, even though it has a marketing authorization. So my question to you is, for this drug, which is still a protected drug, a patented drug, it's not a generic, what are the concrete measures that can be taken to really make this drug affordable in the low-middle income country and maybe in some of the not so middle country?
I love this question because I was hearing a presentation from a colleague in Sweden, and he mentioned some targeted therapies for adults with AML. And I said, this is incredible that you have access to this. And he goes, no, the study closed last year and our government didn't approve it for reimbursement. So even though it's like half of Europe and the US has frontline approved, easily reimbursed, he says, we can't in Sweden, even though we did the study that got the reimbursement everywhere else. So I think it is very important. The idea of access is not just for low-income countries or middle-income countries. However, I do think it's fair that pharma companies are for-profit companies. Well, Servier is actually a nonprofit, but most pharma companies are for-profit, and they're gonna make their money somewhere. So I do think the best place to make their money is in the high-income countries, where they can charge a high fee to us, especially in the US, where we apparently have a very high healthcare budget available. So in a way, I don't mind that the richer countries are subsidizing maybe the access programs. But in the access programs, I have talked to colleagues in Servier and in Amgen, who are two of the participants in these programs we've discussed. And they basically both have the same idea, which is, hey, we have a list of countries where we are never going to sell this medicine. There's no commercial market. It will never be profitable. It will never, just the price, the fees to get in regulatory approval. So it's never going to work. So these are the countries where they said we want and we must ethically have an access program to help children in those countries. And so obviously nobody can help every country and every child all at once, but if we don't ever start, we can never finish. So for example, Amgen did a program with St. Jude where they supported blinatumomab use in relapse patients in India and Pakistan and Vietnam, and I'm not sure where all the places were, but quite a few places. And it cost them a lot of money and a lot of free medication and a lot of work they had to do internally to liberate the regulatory, legal, budget, and medicine itself, and handle the logistics of delivery and the cold chain. So it's a lot of work. And so then when they're thinking, how are we going to scale that up? Also, it was a lot of work for St. Jude. And I know we all think of St. Jude as like infinite resource, but it turns out it's not actually infinite. There are some limits. And so they can't, all the training that's required to implement blinatumomab, it's a lot. And so I think rituximab for everybody, this should be immediate action, no downside, got to do it. And especially in Africa, in places with a lot of Burkitt lymphoma, we have to do that, because then we could take out something that's more toxic and maybe have less toxic death and less relapse. So I think there is a strong commitment. Getting onto the global platform, the WHO St. Jude platform, is critical, because as both companies said, look, we can't afford to go to every country. The platform can. The platform is built for this. In fact, Andre, I'd like to hear your ideas of why the platform is such a facilitator and a lever, because of what a company has to do one by one by one.
Yeah, thanks, Scott, and it's great to see you, and thanks to all the presenters for such a great discussion today. So what we, as briefly shared earlier, our objective is to institutionalize it within government agencies that have that function. And if they don't exist, help strengthen functions within those existing government, because that's the only way to make this sustainable. You know, access programs, we all have a heart for them, because not many of us have worked in countries where you see the child in the clinic or the family in the clinic waiting and hoping or abandoning care because they simply can't afford or have access to the medicines. Access programs are an important short-term approach. But what we hope to do with the platform is, again, institutionalize this, to work with regulators. And this is, again, where WHO, we have these experiences. UNICEF has these great experiences. And of course, now with the link within the St. Jude global network of hospitals, we can bring all the stakeholders to the table, so that when the product is made available, the company doesn't have to take responsibility for the regulatory approval. There's a pathway for that we can facilitate as part of the platform. The company doesn't have to take care of the supply chain. We invest in the infrastructure to make sure the supply chain is in place. The company doesn't have to worry about diversion. We have mechanisms to track and trace and understand where products are going and for what purposes. The company doesn't have to worry about bad publicity because of an adverse event. We have mechanisms for pharmacovigilance and for reporting. And so these are the types of, again, investments that we want to make. They don't come on day zero. Obviously, these programs take time, but it's the recognition that in many of the countries, they know this is a challenge, and they're trying to develop institutions themselves that have these functions. And so our opportunity as a platform is to go there and say, we see that you're trying to develop a stronger national regulatory authority. Let's figure out how we can work together for a facilitated regulatory pathway that doesn't overburden you and leverages the fact that these are approved by stringent regulatory authorities. Or how can we look at pre-qualification to help minimize the regulatory burden, custom clearance. These are all the aspects that, again, we try to mainstream. And so while we do need to talk about access programs, we are slowly looking at a complete revamp of the market approach so that all countries, all national stakeholders, all children can be seen on equal footing. You know, it is a understandable hope that high-income countries can subsidize the cost for low and middle-income countries. But again, there are business models that can make it possible for all countries to have access. It will come in due order, and the platform is a springboard to make this a reality.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I would like to hear from you, Roberto, in El Salvador. If you don't, you guys are one of the first countries selected for the platform, or I think maybe number 9 out of 12 or something like that. How do you know of the concrete steps that were taken, or was that other people who were doing those steps?
No, in El Salvador has been an incredible process. When we start with pegdaspagina, that is an example that I can manage very well because I have followed all the process. The drug is not available in the commercial way, so there is not we call it a number of in the registration number in the Ministry of Health, not even in our federal drug regulatory institution. So we asked to the authority, how can we do available the drugs in our setting? And they said there was only one way, in our protocol, with that question. So we have to solve the problem that there was an incredible use drug in all the countries and the developed countries, and that we have for sure increase our outcomes. And we had to do a regulatory part, which is part of the pharmacies. That is, we had to report all the adverse events. So if we can accomplish that 2 things, we can import the drug directly to our foundations to have available for the patients without any cost. So the only problem for the government, I guess, has not to be commercial, because I guess this moved the market. I don't know, but I had my ideas. And if we can have these protocols, and we have for sure have these adverse event reports to the entity which is in charge of that, we can import the drug and we can use it without any cost. Even there was some taxes that was that our foundation have a commitment and what have an arrangement with the presidential house, and we can avoid even taxes for that. But we have to do it in a protocol. If there is not protocol, we cannot use it because it's not registration. There is not registration for the drugs. And for the future, let's say that if we can do that for the other, I was thinking in Veneto class, you told me, Scott, and I have been reading that in low intensity group of patients treated for acute myeloid leukemia, venetoclax can increase the survival. Well, this is maybe another goal for our foundation to achieve, but we have to work in the protocol in the first steps, and then we have to think about it. But it's a process that's in countries in Central America with Minister of Health have similar condition. It's possible. It's not so far away.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And also, I'm glad you mentioned the role of a protocol when bringing access to new medications or to old medications that might finally be available on a stable basis thanks to access programs like the platform. Gilles, I wonder if you want to comment about why you have to have a protocol to make this work and to make it safe.
You mean me?
Yes, please. Because GFAOP, for me, this is like the essence of protocol-based care.
You were talking about GFAOP. Sorry, I didn't switch the gear.
Or why you have to have a protocol. So like in Roberto's case, this government required it. But I think in your case...
Yeah. Sorry. I was on the mode SIOP International informing the WHO Essential Medicine List, and then you asked me a question from GFAOP.
I'm using your whole brain.
Yeah, sure. I am not from the GFAOP, which is the Groupe Français Franco-Africain d'Oncologie Pédiatrique in the Sub-Saharan Africa, which has been created years ago by Professor Jean Lemaire. And clearly the vision was to increase the capability to give access to good treatments to all patients, is to create dedicated units with people who are trained and using protocol. And this is what has been published over years, which is, and now there is a big registry with recommendation where they are capturing data for the treatment for ALL, retinoblastoma, Burkitt lymphoma, and so on. So clearly the vision is clinical research really drive the quality of the treatment in addition to improving the survivals. But again, I am not from GFAOP. I'm just sharing.
No.
Okay. Sorry.
You don't have to endorse them. I endorse them because I think they're terrific and they're helping a lot of children with cancer. But my spies told me that you were bringing rituximab to Burkina Faso and some other places as part of protocol-based support.
Oh, indeed. You mentioned blinatumomab for acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Rituximab is now well-informed, validated, authorized for the treatment of large B-cell lymphoma and Burkitt lymphoma in children. And clearly the goal is really to make this available for all children with this disease as part of the global initiative on childhood cancer, because clearly it did 10% in the high-income countries treatment protocol and can really improve on the top of these treatments without doxorubicin the survival of this patient. And clearly we showed in the SIOP working group on essential medicine that there are quite a few countries, not a few, but several or even more, where the drug is not available. And clearly this is at the moment, since it's not the global initiative, the global platform is not available in all countries in the future, but not yet. The goal is how to identify in a few countries some solution to make the drug available. And this is why the GFAOP has been working in 2 countries where there's a very high incidence of this Burkitt lymphoma, which is Burkina Faso and Ivory Coast. And we hope, with the help of Servier, that we will be able to provide rituximab for this patient. But it's just one example on how to move forward. And the question is, how can we multiply all this example and have a more global initiative really to put this forward? Which was a question about blinatumomab. I think there is a very strong case how really to make this available for all.
Yeah, but I love that we're talking about access strategies. So we have access through commercial access, just buy it and use it, perfect. If you can afford it, and if it's approved and if it's reimbursed, then it could be perfect. We have access through the global platform, also perfect if you're one of the countries and if it has the medicines you need for this particular patient. So in other words, the perfect strategy commercial is not actually perfect. There are some gaps. The perfect strategy platform also has some gaps. Maybe your country is number 25, or maybe you're a high income country and you're never going to be supported by this particular platform. So in other words, we need other access strategies. A third one that Anna mentioned is access through philanthropy. And I wonder, and I want to say about City of Smile and how that's been working over the past years, because I think it's really an important additional access strategy through. Uh-oh. Can you hear me, Anna?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay, good. Can you say a few words about access through philanthropy and the role of City of Smile charity in Armenia?
Yes, of course. Unfortunately, only a small part of the essential medications is covered by the government of Armenia. The most part of the medications and diagnostic tools is covered by the charitable foundation. In Armenia exists the main foundation covering whole treatment and diagnostic called City of Smile. And even they do their own best to provide the essential medication to our children. However, when it comes to the high expensive medications and like the immunotherapy, blinatumomab, and others, we have to prioritize patients and to choose with our medical team and the foundation who needs that medication most. And sometimes if the cost is too high, they initiate some charitable, programs to get medication, to get funding for cases when the price is not affordable for the charity, for the foundation. Yeah, but through one of this, through all these initiatives, we somehow already the burden to the foundation was decreased. For example, they have not to pay for the pegosperaginase at this moment, and this helps us to transfer that money to other to other medications and diagnostic tools that we need at this moment.
Yeah. And in fact, that was exactly my next point, which is, of all the access strategies, we want all of them, right? It's not either or, it's both and. And if somebody will donate a batch of medicine, then that foundation can put that money toward the next thing. There's the needs are unfortunately infinite, right, or too much. And so then Professor Zhang showed us the many options of access through research. Her patients going on study, do they have to pay for those study drugs? No, they do not. Study drug is free. And so access through research is another way. So my dream is to have infinite research everywhere, answering questions that pharma companies need answered. And, you know, if it's a study drug, and in a way also, I like it because it liberates us from this donor-recipient model. It makes us collaborators. Like, hey, we're giving you data that you need to help, you know, advance your product. You're giving us your product, which we need to cure our patients. So that it's more of a collaboration instead of a donation. And that brings me to the last point, which is Act for Children. And since Manette had to go, so I wanted to make one comment about that. It's just yet another access strategy designed to complement all the other access strategies. And so this one is basically to say, what if I have a patented drug? What's my greatest fear with a patented drug? If I put it on a platform, what if it goes somewhere and sneaks off and gets sold to somebody else? So diversion. Luckily, Andre, I want to finish with you commenting on anti-corruption, anti-diversion, and all the steps that the platform has taken to avoid the very common problems that occur at our planet. But before you take at the end of this meeting, I wanted to finish the Act for Children. So the idea is they have 3 fears. Fear number 1, diversion. And these are not in order of importance. They're just 3 fears. Fear number 2 is somebody uses our drug that we provided through Access platform and a patient dies of preventable toxicity, because the supportive care was not there, the knowledge was not there. Blinatumomab is great, but it's no picnic to deliver it. It's a lot of work, 28-day infusion, a lot of logistical work. It has side effects that have to be managed, aggressively managed. So if you just close your eyes and put blinatumomab, you might hurt people, and you're not going to hurt as many as you help, but you might hurt a lot and help even more, but you're still going to hurt too many. And if somebody dies during an Access program, that ruins it for the whole company and for every other patient, because no company can withstand the negative things that happen if a patient dies from their drug who should have lived. And so the third fear is sort of a lifelong obligation, let's say, where, hey, I helped you out for 5 years, and now I have to help you for 50 years. It's not really fair to ask companies to do infinite support with no limits, in the future. So this is where you could imagine, what has Act for Children done? It brought pegosparaginase to El Salvador and Guatemala and Honduras and Armenia and Indonesia. It's arriving in Indonesia tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Perfect, great. So that's a donation, because pegosparaginase is not yet on the platform. But how to make it sustainable? A donation is not sustainable. It's a one-time thing, good for 6 months, 1 year, we'll see. But it needs to then go onto the platform and have a way to be sustainable, first by the platform, but also the platform can't make an infinite commitment, right? Because eventually the government has to come, the insurance companies have to come, but the platform can say, look, we've got now a pricing structure and a market structure and a delivery mechanism that everybody is used to. It's cheap, it's effective, it's just working well. So now you don't have to create all that. All you have to do is just put in a little money to bring down all the necessary medicines. And so that's why I'd like you to finish us out, Andre, with comments about sustainability, anti-corruption, and any final thoughts.
Thanks, Scott. What a great privilege. And thank you to all who are listening. More than 300 people is quite a remarkable reflection of how dear to our hearts this topic is. Scott, thanks for great moderation, because I think this is the perfect phase out and moment for us to pause and reflect a little. So for those 3 fears, I mean, the easy answer is for all of us to say we have a vision, we know how to address these issues. We're doing it in each of our programs, whether it's the platform or ACT or JFAOP's work or clinical trials. We all live with these fears. And yes, our different initiatives have mechanisms to address those fears. In fact, for the platform, as an example, we're developing now the sustainability strategy, because this is not the reality of the platform changes and the reality of childhood cancer market changes day to day. We need to be adaptable, we need to be responsive, and we need to be keep a lens on the future for what is best for communities. So maybe rather than closing on those 3 fears, which I think are extremely important to be honest about and to say out loud, maybe we could also close with 3 hopes. So the first is the recognition that the fears that we all live with, speaking for myself at WHO headquarters, to some extent disconnected from clinical reality. I'm a clinician myself, and so I do take note that I live in a different world. But the hope that I have is that if we start by listening to the families, if we start by listening to local stakeholders, the solutions are there. They're the ones that are most worried about diversion. They're the ones that are most worried about side effect profiles. They're the ones that are worried about their own families and the next generation. And so if we start listening to the local solutions, that's the hope. These types of webinars are great to inspire intellectual exchanges. But the hope is that if we listen to the communities most affected, which I think the Oncodaily gave voice to today, let's just remember that as a hope for the future. The second is to build on what exists. There's still a lot of coming in, construct a new pathway, construct a new program. And then when we leave, okay, we've left and all that infrastructure is gone. That's true for access programs, that can be true for clinical trials, that can be true for many of the initiatives that we've been part of. But what we've learned in the childhood cancer community, I think a lot in the past 7 years, is many programs exist. Let's also invest in what the national infrastructure is for regulatory agencies, for pharmacovigilance, for clinical training and guidelines. There are areas that we can build on. And if we're seen as builders, not as replacers, then we have a more sustainable future together. And then the last, I think, Scott, you touched on all the points you touched on. The third hope that I have is to also keep an eye on innovation. You know, we all talk about the benefit of clinical trials, and that's a critical aspect. But we're also seeing great innovations in manufacturing techniques. We're seeing the manufacturing costs of producing monoclonal antibodies come down quite quickly. We're hopeful for new therapies like CAR T therapy that are emerging on markets. We need innovation. We need innovation. We need better ways of working, better access to clinical trials, better manufacturing techniques, better data systems, better ways of training. And that's the only way that this is going to work, because the business model doesn't balance very favorably when we talk about trying to give $20,000 of medicines to every child around the world with cancer, given the economic realities that we live in. It does look a lot better if we find ways to drive that price down or drive that cost down. So 3 fears: diversion, I think, side effect profile, as you said, management of toxicities, and lifelong obligations. Let's balance them with the 3 hopes of child-centered, family-centered care, sustainability building on what already exists, and then a lens on innovation. So for us, that's what we're thinking about in the platform. We think all of us are thinking about that, whether it's the great work of Gilles or Roberta, Professor Zhang, Anna, and others. So let's keep those hopes. Let's remember that it's the children that inspire us. And I reserve the hope that in 5 years, Oncodeli will bring us back together with a little more gray hair, a little more energy, I hope, and a much better optimistic view to share. So thank you, Scott. Thank you, Oncodeli. And it's been a great privilege to be here.
Oh, this is the perfect closing. I really appreciate it. And also, Andrea, your 3 hopes already came true, because Act for Children has mechanisms to avoid those 3 problems. So I miscommunicated because I wanted to highlight it's like the gentle introduction of somebody who has an innovator drug, like a still patented drug, how to get them onto the platform to say, hey, the information system is going to track every dose. So if you're willing to give your blinatumomab or your pegosparaginase or your temozolomide, every dose will be accounted for. We won't tell you, but we'll know which child got it, and that this vial went to this child, that dose went to that child. So there won't be any diversion, because it'll be fully documented and traceable. And there'll be a wraparound training program and protocol-based care, which is Roberto's requirement anyway. To get the medicine into the country, you've got to have a protocol. So the idea is that Act for Children is specifically to de-risk all that, and then to make sure your hopes can become a reality, because when will that, if it transitions over to the platform, then the de-risking has to be taken over by the local team, right? Just exactly like you said. And I got to tell you a story of innovation, because I was just sitting in this SciOp Asia, and there was a whole session on Hodgkin lymphoma, and the radiation therapist got up there and he said, well, let me show you this latest. He said, here's our fields, here's how we do it. And he said, but I'm going to stop short, because here's the latest clinical trial, which is ABV plus nivolumab. Nivolumab, a checkpoint inhibitor immunotherapy, with 3 very old, very cheap, very generic chemotherapies. And it was 95% event-free survival. And out of 1,000 patients on the study, or 900 something, 6 got radiation. So 99% got no radiation. And he said, looks like an innovation in medication has made me unnecessary here. So I'll go over to the other session, and you carry on over here about making sure people have access to nivolumab. Because nivolumab will be generic soon. And also, Yushuo already has her checkpoint inhibitor coming down the pipe, made in China for Chinese, but I hope for all of us eventually. So I love your idea of innovation as a way to sort of radically reduce costs. Because what if we didn't need radiation? Imagine IAEA could invest their talent and energy on other things. We could have so much liberation of energy. It's really good. So thank you.
And brentuximab, both drugs.
For example.
Yeah,
exactly. All about access. So that's why I really thank you. And Shushan, give us our closing word and blessing.
Thank you so much, everyone. I think we had a wonderful discussion. Thank you for the wonderful moderation, Dr. Howard. And it was a critically important topic that we covered today. Thank you to all our speakers for their time and for their commitment. Yeah, thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Take care. Here's a hug.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Have a good day.